Geishas, samurai warriors, shoguns' castles. A living museum for 1,000 years. Kyoto, Japan. But old ways are dying out.
目がどこ向いてるかを設定する元をやってるところ。日本の
There has been next to no respect for Japan's ancient culture.
ですから制度的にも気持ちもですね。
Some believe the very soul of Japan is at risk.
When I walk around the city, I notice buildings being torn down all around me.
Can ancient Kyoto survive? Kyoto today is a bustling city of 1.5 million. Few would recognize its center as the seat of Imperial Japan for 1,000 years. Ancient Kyoto does still exist. No fewer than 17 of its historic monuments have been declared UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Geishas still entertain behind closed doors. And performers still master the arts that entertained the shoguns.
Some people say that the Japanese have the ability to self-censor ugly parts of the town from their minds and only see the good parts. But I believe we actually do register the ugly parts, and it gets in the way when we try to appreciate beautiful scenery. That's why I started the experiment.
Kyoto-born Masafumi Yamasaki is a professor of architecture and urban design. He's got high-tech tools to try to understand how Kyoto's people react psychologically to their city. A special camera tracks their eye movements.
Right now we're checking the direction of his gaze to determine what his eyes are looking at when his pupils go in a particular direction. There's a camera that faces forward, so we match that image to what his eyes are seeing.
Yamasaki believes that our surroundings influence where we look, not necessarily for the better.
It's inevitable that this makes an impact on the psychology of the people as they look around their environment.
Electricity poles and signs always grab my attention. I read the signs, and the poles draw my gaze up and down vertically.
Many of these buildings were erected in recent decades.
There's no continuity to these newer buildings, and there are many signs. Now let's see how eye movements here are different from neighborhoods with a more continuous streetscape.
Does the eye see historic neighborhoods differently? Yamasaki and his team moved to Gion, Kyoto's historic geisha quarters. The neighborhood is still lined with traditional architecture, made from materials like cedar and bamboo.
I look at how the upper floors are all level with each other, and how the bamboo screens hang down from above. I also look at the lattice on the bottom floor, and think it's beautiful.
When the scenery is tranquil and the buildings are carefully made, your eye movements tend to be calmer. In places where the buildings are mismatched, the eye movements are not as calm. I think it's a lot harder for people to feel calm in these surroundings.
Modern Kyoto could be stressing people out, and the city is fast turning into an urban jungle. Hundreds of old homes, called machiya, are bulldozed each year, only to be replaced by car parks, condos, and concrete office buildings, with little or no attention paid to the historic look of the neighborhoods. Kyoto's 17 World Heritage sites are safe from the bulldozers, but are still in need of protection. One of the largest is Nijo Castle. Once the home of the mighty shogun, it's suffering the ravages of weather and time.
In Nijo Castle, there are 28 buildings officially designated as cultural treasures. And most of these have a history that goes back 400 years.
Tamaki Goto is heading up a restoration of the entire Nijo Castle complex.
Here we have a mural carved in wood. It's virtually unchanged from 400 years ago. You can see there's a dragon here and a tiger that's been carved out. But the colors are pretty badly faded, so we're planning to restore the whole thing.
Goto has decided to repair everything just as the original craftsmen would have done it.
この部分ですね、青いところを復元するということを、これとは違うかな、これとは直接違うね、これはこのパーツやね。
Goto has no blueprints or written records to tell him how they did it.
この青い部分をね、
These blue sections here are the missing pieces. We're currently trying to figure out how to fix them, and we're keeping track of the process on this paper here. The craftsman and I discuss and decide on the best way to repair each part.
判断する。
The entire restoration is scheduled to take 20 years. Nijo Castle was built to be impenetrable and to impress. Walls and moats protect the inner palace, raised on a 9-meter-high platform. Visitors pass through specific gates, like the elaborate 2-story tall gate built for the emperor, where Goto's team is getting started.
This gate was built to welcome the emperor to the castle. It's made using the most spectacular craftsmanship.
The emperor's gate is made entirely of wood. Cypress bark is used for the roof. The bark grows back for repeated harvesting, making it a renewable resource. The trees live for over 100 years.
These are all environmentally friendly materials. This traditional process makes the most of nature's gifts.
The craftsmen use the exact same methods as their ancestors, even down to the bamboo nails.
You put a handful in your mouth like this. Then you change their direction in your mouth, taking the straight end out like this. Then you use this hammer and stick the nail in. This is old wisdom from the past. As you can see, everything is done by hand. Using traditional methods like this is the best way for this structure.
With no written records, the plans for Nijo Castle exist solely in the heads of its craftsmen.
Craftsmen would train their young apprentices and pass on their techniques. That cycle was repeated over the centuries. As for me, there's no way I can be here at Nijo Castle until the end of the 20-year restoration. So I'll be training a successor too, teaching the next generation just like with these craftsmen here.
Kyoto must find ways to maintain its ancient practices amidst modern life. And if that practice is a traditional samurai martial art, getting it wrong can mean serious injury. On Saturday mornings, a Kyoto gymnasium becomes the backdrop for a centuries-old ritual. These white-collar salarymen are literally weekend warriors. This martial art might look like a mild-mannered pastime, but it's not for the faint of heart.
It can be dangerous if you're careless. I'd never recommend it to anyone. Luckily, I've only suffered a few bone fractures from this.
はい構えといたらここでもう胸まで持ってっちゃうんだよね。はい。それでちょっと開けばこれでもう入るから。はい。そしてここのまま取り掛けしていける。
ああ、この辺から入れようとしてはいけないってこと。
For publisher Motoki Takabayashi, this is no weekend hobby. It's a lifetime commitment.
I first saw mounted archery when I was in middle school. It was my first time seeing a horse close up. They rode those horses without holding on, with their backs dead straight as they drew their bows. It was extremely cool.
Less cool is the training. Horses are hard to come by in urban Kyoto. Training time is spent on a wooden horse, doing chores, and practicing on the sidelines.
At first, I wasn't even allowed to get on the wooden horse. I had to do drills to practice putting the arrows in at my hip and then putting them on the bow.
But if you're a modern samurai, this should technically prepare you for this. Tomorrow, Takabayashi and his fellow riders compete in a mounted archery contest, an annual event that goes back 900 years. But according to tradition, they shouldn't even be here. For centuries, mounted archery was the domain of a clan of warriors, the Ogasawaras.
My family only ever taught this practice to the shoguns. We never revealed our ways to the general public. That's why the techniques our family developed never got out into the world.
31-year-old Kiyomoto Ogasawara will lead the competition. For 8 centuries, his family has kept the art alive by passing it down to the firstborn son of every generation. The famed lineage remains unbroken to this day.
My father is the 31st generation of the Ogasawaras, so I'm the 32nd in line to inherit our family's art.
Today, the art survives through these annual competitions. And because the clan has made a radical break from tradition, it has invited commoners like Takabayashi to join in, to keep mounted archery from dying out. It's a long way from the days when the Ogasawaras lived solely by teaching their art to the shoguns.
All of us have full-time jobs. Nowadays, people have less and less time to practice compared to the past. A lack of training means not being able to master the techniques, and there's the danger of not being physically fit. When that happens, the art will go into decline.
The survival of this ancient tradition hangs by a thread. Tomorrow, these men have more than just their skills to prove. Thousands will be watching to see if Japan's samurai spirit survives. Kyoto is renowned for its ancient rituals. Its Aoi festival began in the 6th century. One of the world's oldest festivals, it's performed with a deep reverence for history and tradition. But annual celebrations are not enough for Professor Yamasaki. He fears his beloved hometown is turning into a city disconnected from its past, because the way people live is radically changing.
Until 30-something years ago, this street had many old townhouses, and it was famous for being picturesque. But it wasn't designated a preservation zone, and new buildings like these sprung up. It's very different now.
Yamasaki surveys Kyoto's remaining historic neighborhoods to see how they can be preserved. Geishas still walk these streets, lined with the traditional wooden townhouses, which gave ancient Kyoto its distinct look.
These days you get buildings right up against each other, but in the past you had trees and bamboo screens, which would sway when the wind blew. You could see the wind move through the city. You could literally see the seasons change.
But others see the townhouses as something else. Fire hazards in the event of an earthquake. The Ring of Fire is a hotbed of natural disasters, and Japan sits directly on it. Around every 100 years, a massive quake rattles the country's foundations, and these old neighborhoods go up in flames.
Most machiya were built about 100 years ago, so a lot of them are getting worn down. Japanese law says it's better to eliminate wooden houses from our cities.
Yamasaki fights this, one house at a time, convincing machiya owners to keep their historic homes intact.
This used to be a tea house for geisha, who entertained their guests upstairs. They've done a great job preserving it. It should really be protected as a national treasure.
A step inside is a step back in time. Tea ceremony classes are still taught in these rooms where geishas once danced.
This is the matriarch. She was born and raised in this house. She's a tea ceremony teacher.
The Shimosatos have lived here since the 1800s. Today, theirs is one of the few traditional buildings left on the block.
It's completely different now. I remember that when I was a child, there was only one modern building along the street.
Developers pay nice prices for the land in these neighborhoods, and maintenance of these old houses is very expensive. The Shimosatos are staying put for now. But as costs keep mounting for homeowners, Yamasaki is facing an uphill battle. To save the remaining machiya from the wrecking ball, he'll need help. Greg Shand, a New Zealand-born architect, is a Japan junkie. He looks to Kyoto for his fix.
It's like an adrenaline shot for an architect to come back to Kyoto and re-look at the old architecture, to just come back to basics, to see how beautiful the buildings can be.
Shand is searching for ways to save Kyoto's old townhouses with his fellow architect, Shigenori Uya.
When I walk around the city, I notice buildings being torn down all around me.
感じています。
This abandoned machiya has been left to the bulldozers. But Shand and Uya think that even if old houses are demolished, the look of old Kyoto can still be preserved. Both architects build new houses based on old Japanese principles.
こっちですかね。ああ、これはね、そろばんの日、月水金の3日。子供部屋かもしれないですね、ここは。Room for children.
Children's scribbles.
Yes. 僕もやってましたよ。子供の時は。ね、もう全部取り。
These get torn down, but they're actually treasure troves. I often go and grab fixtures I might be able to use at other sites. It's a real waste to tear them down without making the most of what's left.
Uya salvages parts from these buildings to use in new projects.
The windows and doors in Kyoto's machiya all have the same dimensions. So I can take these parts to other machiya, including those that I'm renovating, and I can reuse them there. These are interesting. They have moving parts.
Closed summer. Summer ga open.
Okay, that's awesome.
Window ga winter ga
winter.
Close.
That's amazing.
In Kyoto's old houses, people live in harmony with nature. The architecture allows the outside to come in.
Oh, okay.
The reason for lowering the ceiling is to keep it cool.
Traditionally, the Japanese are very much in touch with nature and the environment. The old architecture was designed to operate without light, electricity.
You open up the house in the summer for cross breezes, and you close it up in the winter, so you really feel the seasons. Today's houses are all closed up. You use air conditioning to adjust the temperature, so you don't feel the changes in the seasons.
Let's do it. So I can just sit here and contemplate. So, I want this in my house. I kind of like this feeling.
Today, Yamasaki has invited the two architects to tour a house that is still occupied, and that Yamasaki hopes to save. The Inoue family has lived in this house for 11 generations, since the 1700s. But there's a problem. They're childless. They have no one to leave the house to.
僕はもう生まれた時からこの家に住んでまして、もう今この家をどうして維持しようか、考えて頭痛いんですけど、もうどうしたらいいかな。先生どう思われます？そう考
えたらですね、この家が残るというそういうことが全然保証されていないんですね。もしかしたらマンションになる可能性がかなりあるんです。次の世代にどうやって受け継いでいくかね、これから決めなくてはいけない課題なんですね。
Yamasaki hopes the architects will have ideas about how to renovate these old homes to make them attractive to young buyers. For this threesome, the pressure is on. At the rate at which these buildings are being destroyed, the city's old neighborhoods could disappear completely in decades. In Kyoto, the old ways have to stay relevant, or they'll be abandoned. One innovator is pushing for a radical shakeup to save a Kyoto tradition. It's food. It's 9 p.m. in a Kyoto University lab. An elite group of chefs and scientists are gathering to test new recipes.
琵琶湖の天然スッポンのコンソメ、ホワイトアスパラガスと、フランス産のフォアグラ。僕の残してんの。
Three Michelin star chef, Yoshihiro Murata, has brought this group together. Murata's contribution is a new eggplant dish he's just cooked up.
This is a new practice. Up until now, you never had academics and chefs mixing with each other.
Kyoto's top chefs are traditionally very secretive. But Murata is convincing at least some of them to share their ideas.
Keeping traditional techniques within the family and teaching them to your only son was seen as the way to protect your restaurant. In the past, if you taught your techniques to outsiders, they could use them elsewhere, and your worth would drop. That's why people used to hide things in secret notebooks. But I think that's old-fashioned.
それはもう古いでしょ。
生じゃない方のやつ、この間のやつ。
これ生違います。
前のやつですか。すごい完成されましたね。
それ中にいる。
The eggplant dish is another radical departure from tradition. It's based on principles Murata learned in this science lab.
でも、そうこれ多分すごい濃縮されたのでやってるからちょっとえぐくなるじゃないですか。
これね、もう一本にね、ナス10個ぐらい作ったわ。
そう皮すごいよね。
We're encouraging the evolution of cuisine. If we don't keep doing this, we can't protect tradition. Tradition itself is made up of a chain of innovations.
Murata is a descendant of a line of Kyoto chefs specializing in a unique cuisine known as kaiseki. Kaiseki began in Kyoto's Zen temples and was refined for its emperors. A meal is multiple courses of local ingredients picked at their prime and prepared using methods passed down the generations. It's a culinary tradition that's deeply resistant to change. At his restaurant, Murata is already incorporating science into dishes for his customers.
まあうまいことはうまいけども、もうちょっとなんかできへんかなっていう感じがするな。もう一息なんかいるわなみたいな感じする。ちょっとぼうようとしてるわな。
He's developing a new menu centered on the mysterious fifth taste, known as umami. Literally translated as deliciousness, it was poorly understood. Murata and his lab team set out to get a better grasp of it.
Umami is made up of glutamic acid, inosinic acid, guanilic acid, and succinic acid. It's not just a myth. We have to accept it as a scientific reality.
When those acids hit the taste buds, the brain releases dopamine for an effect that's every chef's dream come true.
When dopamine is released, you keep wanting to eat more of it. That's the effect it has.
Murata's moves are raising some eyebrows.
The older chefs are difficult to convince, but I don't care what they think. I'm 60 years old already, and I want to teach the younger generation different ways of looking at things. And now I have to see how well it will be received by my customers.
It's time for the ultimate test. Unknown to these diners, Murata has done double duty in a science lab to tickle their taste buds. He's maximized umami the secret ingredient that brings together Kyoto's past and present. Umami is a hit.
はい。まあ京都らしいものがやっぱり随所に出てきてる感じはします。はい。
美味しいですね。独特の出汁と日本なんか京都ならではのこう味わいですね。
面白い。
This is the kind of food that people think is fun. It's what I want to work on. The more fun, the better.
楽しい方がいいでしょ。
The reverence for nature that is at the heart of kaiseki is at the heart of nearly every Kyoto tradition. From its meticulous gardens to its architectural style that brings the outdoors in. Yamasaki's architect friends have some ideas on how to save Kyoto's architecture. This will soon be a 21st century machiya.
Humans can technically live anywhere. In a tent, or even in a cave. But we prefer to have homes in the most livable spaces. And machiya are a great example of that.
Woya has a new design that he thinks can transform outdated machiya into the ideal modern Kyoto townhouse.
I'm moving the stairs to the alley, so you go up to the entrance here. There are 1, 2, 3 rooms. This is the patio.
何？チロティ入って見る。そうそう。で吹き抜けにわーって。雪。Beautiful.
Woya is keeping the skeleton of this demolished machiya intact.
We'll cut this part off and support it with a new beam. There was a dirt wall here, but it was crumbling. So we took it down and we're keeping the dirt over there. I want to keep the good parts of the original style, but turn it into a new type of home that hasn't been seen before. I want this new space to be something that can only be done with a machiya. I want it to be a new model for machiyas of the future.
And today, he's giving a sneak peek at one of his new designs.
Wow, this is amazing. This is a beautiful space. So notice everything is dark. The wall is dark, the ceiling is dark, the floor. I can see the reflection actually. So when it's lush, that'll be amazing.
In true Kyoto tradition, the house welcomes the outside in. Reflections on every surface make the garden a part of the home. Even the floor shines with a traditional reflective lacquer, itself a Japanese art that's 9,000 years old.
This house connects the city with nature. The two walls form a channel between nature and the city streets.
If Oya's new machiya design takes off, it could once again bring city life back in touch with nature, as the Japanese originally intended. While the architects look to update the past, Yamasaki is not giving up on his original mission, to keep the best of old Kyoto intact. He's headed for the river. Japan's emperors chose Kyoto as their capital, partly because of the river on its eastern edge. It's the site of another tradition that Yamasaki wants to save. He's come to offer encouragement to a fellow traditionalist.
ごめんください。お邪魔します。お久しぶりです。
山崎先生。
今日はどうもありがとうございます。
久しぶりです。奥様も元気ですか？
ありがとうございます。元気にしてます。
Jeff Berglund lives in a 160-year-old riverside machiya.
おお、素晴らしい眺めですね。
もうちょうど組んでるんですよ。
あ、なるほど。
Berglund's home is about to undergo an annual transformation. He's having a balcony erected. At the start of summer, riverside homeowners build balconies reaching out to the banks. This is where geishas gathered in the warm months to entertain, their thick kimonos more bearable with the river's cool breezes. Today, Berglund insists on sticking to the tradition, exactly as it's always been done.
これが僕もこれちゃうわ。これ違うわ。
Even this is a challenge to keep going.
年に1回のことですから、うち同じ人たちに10年以上頼んでるんですが、年に1回しかないから、みんな前の年思い出しながら。
毎年。
で毎年みんな意見が違うからこうやったんちゃうか。
もうちょっとこっち入れとくわ。もっと向こうでバランスをとって。
To keep the balcony level, the same rocks are placed in the same spot every year. With no written records, they rely on memory, skill, and trial and error.
書いたんだけど石の形がこれもこっちも全然違うの。
いいの位置あったん？ないな。どれ？いいの位置こっちや。
This tradition is changing. Many of the riverside buildings are now restaurants. They built their balconies weeks earlier to bring in more customers. A tradition that used to be a celebration of the seasons is giving way to speed and convenience.
ほとんどのとこクレーン車が来て、この鉄骨のあれを下ろしたりして、ほんでみんな工事現場のヘルメットして、うちは普通の大工さんが普通の。
With less demand for their handiwork, these carpenters' traditional skills may soon be lost altogether.
Kyoto is a place where it's very easy to be close to nature, surrounded by mountains. There's not a place in Kyoto that you can't see the mountains. And I think this kind of house teaches us that we not only are living with nature, and that it's a fact, but that we have to be in harmony with nature. I just can't give it up.
Berglund's crew works all day.
出来上がりました。
ああ、素晴らしい。
だからうちはこう柱も床自体もそれから縁も全部木なんですよ。
そうですね。いいですね。
で、やっぱり床出るとこう先までこの鴨が見えるからね。飛び石でこ
こまで来れるからね。
はい。
Keeping traditions alive takes passion and commitment. On the other side of the river, mounted archer Motoki Takabayashi is leaving his family to spend the night with his fellow archers.
I'm most worried about injury. Other spectators who come to watch will be intent on whether the rider hits the mark. But I can't watch with the same mindset as them.
Warriors used to spend months preparing for battle. But Takabayashi can only hope that his weekend trainings are enough. At Shimogamo Shrine, the annual mounted archery competition is set to begin. Against the backdrop of an ancient sacred forest. 25 riders are gearing up for a shot at proving themselves modern-day warriors.
In mounted archery, you have to hold a bow at a full gallop. I might not even be able to master it for as long as I live.
20,000 people are gathering to witness the ancient spectacle. Archers ride at a full gallop of over 60 kilometers an hour, all while trying to hit 3 targets. It's a test not only of skill, but also courage.
You have to have guts, the ability to let go of your hands as you're riding. You don't need anything else.
Each rider's costume is based on his rank. Takabayashi wears the simple outfit of the student. The clan leader wears a nobleman's kimono that weighs nearly 10 kilograms. It takes him an hour to get ready. A ritual greeting marks the start of the competition, a tradition that's been intact for centuries. Ogasawara, too, is feeling the pressure. His father is watching his every move. If anyone is expected to hit all 3 targets, he is.
As with most cultural traditions, it's not so much about mastering the technique. What's important is how we can use the techniques to grow as people.
Mounted archery runs in Ogasawara's blood. For the rest, it takes only seconds for samurai dreams to be dashed. Takabayashi is next, and his family is watching anxiously.
You have to be able to ride without getting nervous. That boils down to how much you've practiced. That's my main concern. Even if I tell myself it'll be okay, it's hard to stay calm. When I get ready to ride, my palms get sweaty.
So Takabayashi could have used a few more sessions on the wooden horse. But putting his pride on the line and daring to chase his dream is true samurai spirit.
Mounted archery has given me a lot. It's enriched my life. Each of us is destined to discover something that gives us a sense of meaning and purpose and guides us in life. For me, it's mounted archery.
Takabayashi has another year of training before giving it another shot. Against the odds, Kyoto remains a city inspired by its past. Old traditions hold precious wisdom for living well in the 21st century.
Preserving the city's heritage isn't about stopping development or living in the past. It's about learning from the past so we can create a better city.
Kyoto treads a fine line where old ways must compromise for the sake of survival. And the secret to success lies in looking to the past to find the way forward.